Oh.
Hey, welcome to the 5th edition of Out of the Ordinary, profiling the extraordinary adventures, journeys, burst capillaries of ordinary people. Today I have with me a much-loved member of the TMT group. His avatar does him justice, a pink bear with bones strewn around him and the victim's blood still hanging thick from his mouth. It's none other than the lovely, the lovable, the cuddly Stephen Powell, no less.
Hello.
Yes. Fantastic.
Accurate.
So, Stephen, I've got to say that we jumped straight into the deep end.
No one ever calls me Stephen. You can call me Stephen if you want.
Stevie?
It's weird.
Stevie?
No,
S, big S?
Female relatives call me Stevie.
Right.
So, and yeah, that was my gran called me Stevie. And yeah, but yeah, you can call me Stephen if you want.
Stevie.
I'll remember that's me. Where's this fucking Stephen?
Right. Anyone who's had a look recently at your Facebook page, there was a full documentation of what happened, the relationship, the breakup.
Yeah.
Now, as much as I've been sort of guilty of that, because it is quite cathartic.
Yeah.
When you do that, I sometimes question the wisdom of it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already questioning the wisdom of it, and it's like, what, 3 or 4 days later.
Right.
And that post might eventually go onto my audience only.
Have you got any? Did you, for instance, did you get any negative feedback?
No, not at all.
Oh, good.
I mean, I'm not really connected with the guy in question in any other way with any other friends. So nobody really who knew him kind of had seen it. And everyone was really kind of positive about it.
But did you ever get? I always got it. If I posted something even vaguely controversial about my life, where I was feeling in pain, I'd get people that I hadn't heard from in years saying, "Oh well, maybe you should do, being real." And it's like,
oh, really?
I haven't heard from you in fucking 4 years, and you suddenly want to talk to me about how I should run my life and how it's. Or maybe you should do that on a blog. It's not quite the post needed for Facebook and things like this. And I was like, where have you been all my life?
No, everyone was really. I got sort of nice things. Everyone was nice to me.
Well, that's good. That's good.
I think it's because they're more terrified of me than they are.
No, true.
But,
I think I do like to poke people with sticks, so I think I've got to expect that back when I'm feeling a bit weak. Yeah. I mean, if there's a bear, sorry to use the analogy that more suits you, but if there's a bear in a cage, you like to. It's something satisfying about poking a bear.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something kind of. I mean, that's maybe a whole other thread in terms of something that I kind of picked up relatively recently was off the Jordan Peterson, Kathy Newman interview, where he kind of went extensively off about sort of disagreeable people. And that was like a real insight and an eye-opener for me, and kind of realising that people do very much kind of fall into these categories of being disagreeable or agreeable people.
It's the big five, isn't it? Psychologists call it the big five character traits.
Okay.
Disagreeability, agreeability. It's really interesting, yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of am recognising in that I am usually, although I'm quite, and to kind of pick up something you were using in, who was your previous interview, dude?
I've done Jack, Edgar, Eleanor.
Jax. I'm a little bit puckish sometimes. I'm a little bit of a trickster.
I've got to get you two together.
Yeah.
Fuck me.
But it's always kind of, it's really, for me, it's always from a point of view of kind of just the lols. I would hate anyone to, and people do sometimes think I'm quite bitchy and spiteful, but for me, I'm never doing things from a bitchy, spiteful point of view.
Right.
I'm quite an agreeable person. I want to just get on with people. Just sometimes I like.
Saying though, just for lols, and I believe that I do, in total earnest, believe that that's where you're from, but I think. Or trying to think of an example I'll give you, because it's always best if someone can give an example. But people that have done things just for lols, and God bless you, you wouldn't tell it from looking at you, but you are quite a sensitive person. And if someone doesn't give a smiley emoticon, you have often taken it the wrong way and thought, oh fuck, it's an attack.
I'm brittle as fuck sometimes.
I mean, you've been I remember that, I won't mention the name, but there was a few times where we sort of double teamed. I'm talking debates here, fellas. But there was a Facebook debates where we double teamed, and your train of logic and your train of argument is really quite. It was nice to have you as a tag team partner. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You think, oh, he knows what he's talking about. Oh, look at that. Oh, that was a good point. Oh, that is. Oh, thank God, he picked up on that.
Yeah.
And for someone who admires you for that aspect of your personality, it's hard for me to get my head around the fact when you say you're sensitive, because you are able to debate on very intense subjects.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, with everybody, it's like a really complex thing. And I think, I don't know, I am very easily hurt by people. And I think sometimes I'm quite an emotional person. And in certain situations, like recently, a very good friend of mine, who I only know online, but I got to a position of like real trust and love with this guy.
Okay.
And
where does he live? Does he live?
He lives in the States.
Okay.
And I kind of said something to him that provoked him, and he just went on the offensive at me. And it was that sort of combination of having somebody who was really up close and someone I considered to be a trusted friend, then suddenly attacking me was just like, oh God, that's way too much.
But don't you think that's the internet's Facebook?
Yeah,
I mean, I think I've done that sometimes. Really gone off and if in the days of yore, if we'd have just been sat down with a log fire and, and a glass of creme de menthe, it wouldn't have come to that.
Well, it's fascinating how everything is changing and discourse has changed so much, and I suppose in some ways it hasn't, because when you actually do get people face to face, everything is still very much done in the same way. People still talk to each other in the same way. But then as soon as it's transplanted and moved on the online sphere, everything's just kind of like, it's really Wild West. It's really kind of people still trying to work out the social mores and what's acceptable and what's not.
Right.
And you realise that, like, you read some things that are being said, or just kind of basic communication that, in terms of like politics, and that people are quite easily allowed to say things like, oh, I just want to punch that politician. Or like, I wouldn't mind if that politician got knocked down by a bus. And you're like, wait a second, if this was like in the real world, or 20 years ago before online, that would be the loony person in the pub that nobody wanted to have anything to do with. People would be critical of things that they disagree with.
That's really fucking interesting.
But these days it's kind of,
it's almost cool to say that.
Well, the death threat is just that's the social currency these days. If you haven't had a death threat, you know what. I don't know if I've had any.
I love that. Yeah, I've got to get word on something. No, I have had a few death threats.
Really? Cool.
Yeah. I mean, there was one...
Or rape threats, I suppose.
Rape threats? No, I don't think I've had any rape threats. I don't think anyone would want to rape...
Not yet.
No, they'd need one of those paper vomit bags if they were going to rape me as well. I mean, it did trouble me at the time, the death. People wishing I was dead, and the sort of the entourage who were following her, sort of saying, we'll... and again, they're just nondescripts. They're just, they're just trying to impress her. But actually reading it, and knowing it's directed at you, it's quite I won't say triggering, because
it's a distressing thing, but at the same time, it's this insane kind of almost psychotic sphere that we kind of inhabit, where everything's just gone out the window, and people are just free to say whatever it's their id is coming out, isn't it, or something? Whatever kind of Freudian kind of or Jungian component of the personality is kind of just free reign on the internet.
That's true. Yeah, a part that's free reign on. Yeah, that's something that's really. I'd like to.
All the things that we keep under check when we're just being civil and decent.
Do you think possibly because there's always, especially with men, there's always a risk of physicality? Do you think that keeps it in check in the real world? You know, someone says something too bad, you're like, all right, we'll try it then, and then you negotiate. It doesn't always have to end in violence, but you negotiate a space, don't you?
I think it's more. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's more sort of societal, really. I mean, you know, the fear of being tutted at half the time as well. You know, nobody wants to be tutted at.
I'll tell you, I had a friend of mine, Lucas, I think his name was. Forgive me, Lucas, if your name's not Lucas. Not that he'll know now because I've got his name wrong. But he said to get over some of his anxiety, sort of fears, social fears, he'd go into. I don't know if he'd read this in a book, but it seemed like a really good idea. He'd go into places like Starbucks or McDonald's or places that would have a queue, and he'd deliberately get to the front of the line and take a deep breath and pretend he didn't know quite what he wanted. Right. And hear all the tuts and hear all the disdain behind him, reach this sort of crescendo, and then just say, you know what, I don't want anything, and leave. Right. And he said it sort of desensitized him to that social, you know, what other people think and the tutting behind your back and, oh, aren't you fucking ready yet? You should have had your fucking change and you should know what you want before you...
That just fills me with kind of total existential terror. Because, I mean, so I don't know, like, something you probably know about me and maybe other people know about me is I grew up on the Isle of Man from the age of 10. So, and the Isle of Man is fairly, it's fairly kind of regular in terms of island lifestyles.
Yeah. I hear they put a thief in the Wicker Man recently.
That's actually kind of... But I mean, that's all the kind of, you know, the sort of the glamorous mythology. It's kind of, it's really by the by. The interesting thing about living on an island is it's just the amount of nosiness and gossip that goes on. And when you're on an island, which is, the Isle of Man is pretty remote and cut off, it's not like the Isle of Wight where you've got quite a short ferry back over to the mainland. And you're
how long? Sorry for my ignorance. How long is it back to mainland? So by ferry?
It's about 3.5 hours on by ferry because it's the Irish Sea, which is choppy as fuck.
Wow.
So
3 hours.
And then flying obviously is a lot quicker these days.
So what happens if you run out of fags or booze?
No,
three hours.
If the boats don't go, you know, there's pandemonium on the island. If the boats don't arrive for a day, that's it. There's no bread anywhere. People freak out. So
is that why you started to train? So if it did get post-apocalyptic, you could fight your way to the front of the bread queue. Fight your way to the front of the bread queue.
But I can't remember. So I mean, yeah. So in terms of this sort of like mentality, and maybe this is where my sensitivity comes in as well.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe not. But growing up on this island where everybody knows each other's business, everybody kind of is aware of what everyone else is doing. You know, you go somewhere and it's like if you have family on the Isle of Man, you know, you'll go somewhere and it's like someone, I'm your second cousin. Like, what? Fuck, didn't even know, no idea who this person is, and you're all related to each other. So it's that to me is the idea of going into a Starbucks and kind of causing people to tut is just. No, that just fills me with utter dread. It's
filled me with utter dread now as well, thinking about it in that way. But going back to your I mentioned the training.
Yeah.
Now, I think ever since I've known you, you've been into training, but there's a myriad of reasons people train. There's a myriad of reasons people lift weights. People bodybuild. I think for me, it was. Among other things, a compensation. It's a visual thing. It's the first thing they see. But then I sort of started to resent that. Oh, he's a meathead.
Yeah.
And I quite took pride in my intellect. So I'd resent them for thinking of me as a meathead. But of course they have, because it's the first a visual impact is the first thing you have.
That's what I mean. I've got quite a few friends who've managed to get some decent size on them. And one in particular, that's exactly what he said. It's, you know, you can be in a group of people and if you've got some size on you, you will just be kind of sidelined as someone who has anything kind of interesting or intellectual to say. Because you will just be seen as a meathead. So it's not really happened to me yet, thankfully. because I'm too much.
Well, maybe it's the. You know what? I'm going to really get back into training here. I think it's the beard. The beard really gives a sense of sort of avuncular wisdom.
Well, I wonder whether that whole paradigm is being broken down a bit. I don't know. Maybe not.
Well, yeah, but you still don't get meathead thinkers. In fact, a lot of the real. Let's face it. The real meatheads are single-minded monomaniac fuckwits.
Yeah. and then even if you kind of do enter that sort of world of physical, a very sort of male physical sphere, even the ones that are kind of a little bit more thinky, like I'm thinking of like Chris Eubanks.
Okay.
Which is boxing and kind of different
world.
But he just comes out with bullshit. So everyone's like, oh, he's the kind of philosopher boxer.
He comes out with bullshit. Right, okay, yeah.
So, I don't know, people just don't take it seriously. I mean, I suppose that's an interesting thing, like, the most preeminent kind of respected, loved person in the kind of intellectual sphere of our age was Stephen Hawking. The complete antithesis of someone who had kind of developed their body. It's like you have to let your body completely atrophy and be ravaged by disease before people will take you seriously. So that's what you need to be doing.
Well, I'll be honest with you. The big period of time, probably the longest I've ever taken off training, about 2 years, which is where a lot of my centre of gravity went south. I did find a different solace. I mean, you have to. Everyone has to be able to wake up in the morning and look at themselves in the mirror and be fairly happy.
Yeah.
And I sort of found a different solace. Not that I don't want to go back to it, because I did it. And you got to admit, there's a lovely confidence when you feel big. There is a lovely confidence.
It's a weird thing, because like you've been there and you were there for quite a while. I think really, you've developed your body. For me, it's really just a thing since I turned 40.
Wow.
And it's something I always really wanted to do, but my biggest kind of impediment, I suppose, was, it's just it was my size. And, I'm 6'2", and my family genetics pretty much lend me to being kind of willowy and kind of lean. But coupled with the height, there is that whole thing that you get with the kind of compensation issue, maybe with like shorter guys, where they want to kind of be more imposing. It's like, well, I'm 6'2". I walk into a room, I'm going to be the tallest person there.
Absolutely.
So I never had that kind of real visceral sense of emasculation from my size. I mean, I could just kind of stand up straight and people would take notice.
Right.
Which was kind of but that then becomes a sort of double-edged sword, because on one hand, I have that sort of confidence, but on the other hand, it's like I really wanted to be bigger and a big meathead. So,
but saying that I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but wasn't that to be possibly? I know for a fact I was more confident, and being more confident does make you feel a bit more like you're able to attract.
Absolutely.
I felt more attractive, whether I was or not. A lot of people say, "Oh, you was, I didn't fight," but you feel more. You certainly feel more attractive. And there's a huge fetish scene now. Yeah. I mean, through cosplay and through my image being out there in all sorts of ways, Zangief. I had about another 100 people had me from a. Yeah.
Well, that's how we know each other. It's because what was like 9 years ago, I saw you doing your Marvel Hercules.
Right.
And just followed you around Olympia with a boner for fucking 2 hours.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It was a sort of Dave Compass, wasn't it, your boner? We want to find out where Dave is.
My boyfriend at the time, Fraser. He was like, where is he? Quick, follow him.
Fantastic. Do you know, and as I remember when I first started doing Hercules, probably in the worst shape of my life. I was really drinking heavily. I had a big old pot belly, I mean, but that is the lovely thing about...
Not that year, but a couple of years later, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, because I remember a couple of years later when you were then doing... Was it the... What was the one with the cowl?
Bane?
Was it you Bane? No, not Bane.
Cowl.
It had like a sort of fur cowl.
Dark Wolf. The sort of barbarian character.
Yeah. And with your kind of rosé shirt that was like... and your flask of whiskey.
Yeah.
That was kind of like an interesting moment. When you're like walking around Con with a flask of whiskey offering it to everyone. I was the only one who took it. It was good whiskey as well.
Oh, bless you, bless you. You humoured me in my hour of
Completely
succour.
Bottom of the barrel.
I said succour. I'm just going to get another beer before I. Oh, fantastic. I wanted to keeping on the subject again. When I was at my biggest again many years ago, I did use supplements. Now, whenever anyone sees a picture from that period, that is the first question. Not, oh, you look good. Oh, that looks. The first question they were like, oh, what were you taking?
Yeah.
Oh, you must have been on steroids.
Yeah.
Oh, you must have done this. Oh, you must have done that.
Yeah.
Now, as a young man, definitely. I mean, I didn't really know what I was doing, and there's no manual that comes with steroids. No. So you're sort of taking a handful there, or listening to your mate over there.
Yeah.
And especially when nowadays, if I was to do it, you know, you and we've got the internet, and you've got friends, and you get as much information as you can. And try to do it as safely as you can, but it's still not regulated. It's still not regulated. One of the things I found, I had one of my biggest, I won't say, I don't like to use words like breakdowns and triggering and anxiety and depression, but definitely a crash. One of my worst crashes was after finishing, and you do the PM, what is it, PTs?
PCT. Post-psychotherapy.
PCT, post-psychotherapy. And doing it as much as I understood it, but and I always say the only thing that pulled me out of that was my little dog Dottie. Yeah. I didn't want to go. I felt that you start to get paranoid and you start to get it, and having a little dependent was fucking really kept me on the straight and narrow.
So that's the only side of it that really is the kind of the difficult bit. I mean, we're kind of the interesting thing I find about it all is, you say people asking you, oh, you must have been doing this, that, and the other. Actually, from a kind of point of view of people knowing or being able to guess or guessing that you are on it, until you get to a certain size, nobody's any the wiser. Because the media has such a stupid influence on people and what people's perceptions are. It's the whole kind of, that dude 10 years ago, Raoul Moat. Who was kind of steroid lunatic going on a killing spree. And that's what steroid use.
Right.
They're nutcases who have hair trigger tempers and go on killing sprees. And it's like, well, actually, the fact is at the moment that steroid use above 40-year-olds is now reaching huge kind of endemic, if you want to kind of use that language, levels, and it's just.
I mean, wasn't Stallone? Stallone went to Australia and they found HGH and steroids in his luggage, and lots of movie stars. And I'll say Schwarzenegger. I mean, Schwarzenegger's American in the American political arena now, but he sort of admits to taking.
Of course, they're not going to be.
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger's probably taking growth hormone.
Sure. I think you can check yourself into a California health clinic and get a course of HGH.
And he'll be on testosterone replacement therapy as well. The way he looks, he looks fantastic. That's not going to be kind of. It's just unthinkable for someone of his position in the US to not be getting some supplements from somewhere, because that's not the way that's the way the American healthcare system works. That you kind of present with, oh, I'm feeling a bit down. Oh, you're over 40, you're a man, have some testosterone. That's the way it goes. And for the most part, that's that. But you're right, it is the kind of then coming off that's when you really do get the issues that most people do tend to have the same sort of reaction.
I did feel, that
you're crashing your test. You've got no testosterone.
You're putting it into it. You're putting testosterone into your body artificially.
Yeah.
The estrogen tries to track it.
Yep.
Then the ability, if you're doing it for a long time, the ability to create testosterone atrophies.
Yep.
And then you crash off it, and the estrogen is still fucking there. Yeah. The estrogen is still there, and.
Well, and it's also the fact that you will have shut yourself down. You'll have shut down your own production. And so even when you come off the exogenic, your body just does not know how to really make tests anymore. If you have
atrophies, exactly.
Certain point. So you have to, that's when this post-cycle therapy comes in. and you have to use this sort of compound called HCG, which then reboots your, which then they're saying you kind of. I've read people that say this is all getting very technical.
Yeah, is that what HCG? I thought you used that mid cycle.
Well, that's the thing. You can use it during, which keeps this this part of your brain, a little kind of gland or something, kind of ticking over and producing the stuff that makes you produce testosterone. So. It was getting very technical.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's. I mean, it's interesting for me because, as I said, there are manuals that are produced by sort of tried and tested bodybuilders.
The thing these days is kind of like, if you were going to go down that route, which of course we're not saying that either of us have ever done.
Exactly.
Is the whole blast cruise setup where you're doing your own black market testosterone replacement therapy. So you're constantly taking a low level of test all year.
And have you ever met, I'm trying to think if I have, I've met a lot of paranoid people, but have you ever met a horror story where they bought peanut oil or they injected themselves with,
No, I don't think so.
No.
These things are pretty well kind of, I mean, everything apparently is underdosed these days.
Right.
And there are things you can kind of do to sort of mitigate certain aspects of the kind of supply chain sketchiness. And I may have heard of people having kind of underdosed stuff, but there's certain things that, I think it's much easier to kind of completely and utterly get the wrong stuff and not get what you paid for. But in terms of oils, I think it's kind of, it's so... Everything happens so immediately. Within like 3 or 4 weeks, you know whether you were using crap gear.
Okay.
So, and you're talking about giant dudes with like short tempers. So they're going to find you.
No, I'm not necessarily talking about selling it. No, I'm just
because that's illegal, and we would never do that.
But yeah, it's. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, no, the market can't be that big for. Yeah,
have I identified on this?
No.
I mean, it's an interesting thing. It's kind of, I mean, I don't, yeah.
But going back to because the trouble is, I mean, I remember you saying, and I hope you don't not to denigrate your masculinity at all, but I remember you saying, you're going through a period, and you would seem to be crying a lot.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I mean, I still do it if I get a bit drunk and I put a song on that I know is going to set me off, and then I'll put my mind down a memory that I know is really going to fucking set me off, and I'll have a little sob on the couch and tell Quincy, my dog, to come over and give him a stroke. Say, don't ever leave me, and all this stuff. But
sometimes you just have to do that. I mean, and that's that's something that someone who's kind of a little bit more sensitive.
Yeah. But do you think it exacerbates that?
No, it comes in waves. I mean, and sometimes I'll just have a day where it's like, oh God, it's really fucking hitting today, and I just want to kind of, and everything's setting me off.
Right.
And then it'll go, and I think generally for someone who's kind of, so far we've painted this picture of me being quite this sort of emotionally wrought basket case. But
no, I don't think people are going to say. If anything, they're going to might take that away from me. But I mean, for instance,
I was going to say, but I'm a very resilient person, so it's like I will get down, and then like the next day I'll be absolutely fine.
Well, it's like Michelle, the first interview I did. Yeah. She's talking about she's having anxiety, but she said, you just peel yourself, and then someone rings you up, or you've got something to do. You peel yourself off the linoleum, and you fucking get on with it. And I think a lot of people do. You'll have to forgive me, Steve. You probably have told. What is it exactly that you do? Your job description. What are you?
Oh God,
it's IT. Something to do with IT.
I don't have to kind of think about this. So
you have to embellish it yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. Ostensibly, I'm a programmer.
Yeah.
And I program front-end systems. So that's basically all the kind of code that makes the UI and presentation of graphics.
Right.
And there'll be some sort of jiggery pokery.
And when did you learn that? When did you get qualified?
That's just been an ongoing kind of process of picking things up as I go along.
From what age? From where?
Well,
what was it? A BTEC? Was it?
No. So
as Del says, was it a GCSE? GCSE in maths?
Well, no, because it wasn't really around. I mean, my schooling was happening when, it's still the kind of the infancy of kind of IT and computing. Well, not so much the infancy, but
well, it was 10 years ago, was it?
Yeah, the rules and the kind of the hadn't really been formed. So in terms of how that had trickled down into schooling and kind of, and certainly within GCSEs and stuff, it was, you were still learning stuff from maybe 15 years previous. You were learning all the basics of computer science. So that's what I did, and I was a real sort of geeky, nerdy tech head up until kind of my A-levels. And then, but I'd always been this kind of very much kind of I characterise it, and I think these days I think it's all bullshit. But the whole left brain, right brain thing. Oh, right. I'm very analytical, but I'm also quite creative. And I always did have that, and that is kind of if you want to kind of, well, I think it's crap now. But but then all of a sudden I had this sort of total. I can't do computers anymore. It's just they're all the kind of nerds, and I can't deal with these social rejects anymore.
Let's not become one.
Pretty much. So and I completely flipped, and I did in a good way. I didn't flip out. And I did my A level.
You're determined to make that. No, I flip out, but it's always in a good way.
So my A levels, which are kind of, it's bizarre when you kind of look at, because nobody thought my A levels made any sense, which was computing, art, and maths. And at the time, it was like, okay, you go and do those, that's fine. And now, 20 years later, the things I use all the time are computing, art, and maths.
Right.
I knew what I wanted. I always knew. I had this sort of little kind of instinctual knowledge of this is what I'm interested in, and I think there's something in this.
Right. I've got to say to anyone. For the two people that listen to this, listen. You've got to. I think it was fantastic, and I was very proud of myself, and quite. I just think it was a great idea. He's got two tattoos, one on either calf, the left and the right calf, and they are in the style of Victorian portrait miniatures. And for anyone just passing, they're just Victorian. They look very artsy and Victorian portrait miniatures. But one is of Ada Lovelace, and the other is it Charles Babbage? Charles Babbage, yeah. Charles Babbage. And he was walking out my shop the other week, and I noticed them, and I managed to get the identities. First I did say, who are they? And you said, come on. Yeah. And I looked at them. And
surrounded by Victorian miniatures and
it was just I just thought, wow, what a fucking brilliant idea. Yeah, I mean, that's part of your identity. I mean, who has mum or nan or the names of their kids? But you're in IT, and did you come up with the idea? Basically?
Yeah, totally. It was just something that kind of got stuck in my head, and it was like, that has to happen. That's just. Did you think about them higher up originally on the butt cheeks? Oh, that's quite a painful area.
Oh, okay.
Well, my calves are really bloody painful.
No, I can imagine. There's a big.
It's really fleshy, and if you're wearing long trousers, your skin on your calves is constantly getting rubbed by trousers, so it's quite sensitive skin.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it was like it just all fell into place of that's what I want. Gonna get that, and I found this artist. And he was this super trendy artist over in East London, and that was interesting in itself. He was a nice enough guy, but then we kind of nearly fell out over. I really wanted the frames on it, and most of his kind of stuff, and what he's known for is this sort of etching or dry point style, copied onto the body and then just sort of slapped somewhere. So it's very kind of just brutally just chucked onto the body, and there's often no framing devices. It's just blur.
Okay, yeah. I think one of my shoulders very much like that.
Yeah, and I was kind of really adamant that I wanted it, and he was like, oh, I don't really do frames. I was like, okay. But he did it in the end. I don't think he kind of was particularly happy. When you look at the frames and actually the line.
Well, I love the juxtaposition of them as well.
Yeah.
Where we got how did you get the likenesses from? Where did you get them?
So they're just, they're both just standard portraits of them. Yes.
But no, because they look, if you say, for instance, you were going to try and make consistency between the two, you'd make them look like they were done by the same artist.
Yeah.
But they actually look like they're done by different artists, which you'd expect if you're doing one of Babbage and one of Lovelace.
I didn't really. I'm terrible for not thinking things through very well, but I mean, they worked really well.
They do, they work very well.
I constantly get people kind of talking about them, asking about them.
Someone asked about them the other day, didn't they? Yeah. I mean, you told me it earlier, but relate it again. Argos, was it?
Brixton Argos.
I thought it was Elephant Castle.
Brixton.
They're all the same, the Argoses. It could be any Argos, any number of Argos.
Very different. Really nice. Argoses.
Right, okay.
Road is very nice.
Tunbridge Wells Argos is very nice.
Architecturally interesting. And there was just these two girls. There, you asked him, excuse me, are those your relatives? I was like, and I'm saying to you, you just told me off because sometimes it's like, oh God, I can't have this conversation with you. You have money.
Yeah, you said to me, they're my relatives.
Yeah.
You should have told them and you never know. It might have inspired them to start a career in computing and IT.
But then the one girl went back to the other one. She's like, it wasn't a gypsy lady, which was just like, oh, that's brilliant. It's a gypsy lady. It's a lovely stuff.
Gypsies.
The first this is really bad actually. From a kind of, I'm like outing myself as some kind of like arch feminist, really, with having Ada Lovelace on my calf.
Saying that about Ada Lovelace, it stayed in my head. The last thing you told me the other time about masculine. I was going to say masculine toxicity. So I better stop these. Toxic masculinity.
Well.
And you said something again. You always planting seeds. Right in my head. Sorry, planting seeds in my head. God, nowhere else, of course. About what was it now? About the ability to express yourself. And I said, surely I made a huge generalisation. I didn't sort of quite mean to make it that way, but about aren't gay men perhaps more in touch with their feminine side? And you said, no, it's things that we suppress or things that we're able to express as males or as females.
Yeah.
And you said you don't think males are able to express themselves in that way.
No, I think it's just something that someone else planted in my head. That the one of the kind of central main temples of toxic masculinity is that men are unable to kind of express their emotions and they're unable to kind of get all that. And I do think there is something in that. I do think that.
Sure, men, I think so too.
But this acquaintance of mine was basically then saying, well, is it maybe that the men aren't able to express themselves in the same way that women can? And I think there's something within that. And I think it's, how men release stress and how we release these kind of feelings in a constructive way for us. And I think it's an interesting thing because, you're talking about bringing in the gay thing, and one book that I read recently, which is kind of hugely contentious, which is called Androphilia by this guy, Jack Donovan. And he really has a lot of things to say on these lines. And in terms, he really is this kind of big exponent of violence. That basically violence is man's way of kind of expressing himself.
Well, I mentioned that before about physicality. Would you be able to express yourself like you do online if another man is there?
Yeah.
And I don't think it would necessarily always end in violence, but you would certainly negotiate a space and a sort of posture.
Yeah.
And maybe it would sort itself out that way. But don't you think, you say man's not been able to express it, it's because other men and women exploit another man's expression of his emotions. They think, that's a way in.
Yeah,
That's the way. That's the way.
But there's that, but there's also there's a lot of policing that goes on of kind of gendered norms in terms of, you know, as soon as someone is sort of seen to be acting outside of what is considered to be acceptable masculine behaviour, then policing happens, and you know that takes many forms. Maybe it's just gentle ribbing, maybe it's kind of a little bit of
gentle ribbing. That was a condom I used. Sorry, yeah, gentle ribbing.
A bit of French tickling.
Sorry, I didn't. You were on a really good point there. I'll just put it down to the lowest common denominator. So yeah, it takes a form of gentle ribbing.
Yeah, or you know, overt bullying, or you know, anything to kind of like contain and isolate the kind of aberrant behaviour, and you know, and I think it's
so. You think even in today's society that happens?
Yeah, God no, totally.
Right.
My the most kind of interesting thing, and it's such a trivial thing, but like you know, and it's honestly it's laughable, but man buns. You know, as soon as anyone has a man bun, everyone just kind of flocks on it. Like, what are you doing? Oh, that's terrible. Oh, look at this person.
Man bun, the hair.
Oh, the hair.
Ah, okay.
And that's less of a behavioural thing, but more.
But saying that, there's a guy that came in the other day. I think he was Sikh, and he had a man bun. And the Sikhs always look good with man buns, don't they?
Well, you shouldn't have been wearing a turban if you're Sikh.
No, but they don't, do they? Until a certain
right.
And of course, a lot of them have become slightly. They do wear that as a man before they have the turban. Yeah. And of course, you meet other Sikhs who don't quite who sort of have it. Dare I say the word watered down, but
like everybody's cultural thing, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and then that's acceptable.
But they are a manly bunch of people, the Sikhs. I mean, they look, but
I just think it's I do.
You'd criticise someone if he wore. I mean, I purposely wore to one convention, but it was when I was at my biggest, and I just wanted to see the reaction that it had. I think it was a Care Bear or My Little Pony, really tight muscle vest.
Yeah.
And no man came up to me and said, "Oh, you fucking," you know. All I got was the girls. Oh yeah, I remember. And I couldn't name them. I didn't wear it because I was a fan. I just wanted just a social experiment to see if I would be sort of ostracised or, you know.
But it's all about. I guess it's all about the framework and the space in which you're doing these things, and within a con. Yeah. That's the interesting thing. You know, cons are very kind of. They are quite open places, and I think, but it's interesting then when you kind of juxtapose that with the way cons are talked about online, and I think there is this kind of there's growing divide between how we exist online and how we exist in the real world, and this whole the whole meme stuff about cosplay is not consent. Actually, cosplay is not consent, and it's like it's such a weird, and I can kind of see the kind of there are the extremes of where. Some young little kind of things maybe kind of really harassing some girl.
Well, I did. Eleanor's, I brought it up. Yeah. I did ask her, and I said, try and cast your mind back, try and be as honest as possible, because Eleanor was a very attractive young girl, dressed as Harley. She, all credit to her, she wasn't quite have a look at my tits, but when you're in Lycra, there's not much that's left to the imagination, and. She could only bring up one real example where someone had smacked her arse, and of course that's pretty that's physical. It's not catcalling. That's actually really someone come up to her smacking your arse, and she said, he must have been in his late 20s, 30s, and so it's not some fucking kid, adolescent kid who don't know any fucking better and needs a slap round the head. It's a fucking grown man who's doing that. But the cosplay is not consent was almost. To use a term, there's no such thing as a good witch hunt.
No, exactly.
And the Me Too movement, however you want to frame it, of course it's. And again, you mentioned Jordan Peterson earlier. Jordan Peterson said at one interview, "What do you think about the Me?" Well, I think they should have spoken out earlier. And then they tried to sort of position him as an evil because he said, "Well, don't you think it's wrong?" He said, "Well, yeah, I thought that's a given. That's a given that it's wrong." And I just my take is on it that I wish someone had said something earlier, which I think was a really valid point.
A valid point.
Yeah,
but it's like, the overwhelming kind of atmosphere when you go to cons is just one of fun, enjoyment.
Sure.
And there isn't this sort of, for me, maybe this is just my male privilege, maybe it's kind of the fact that I'm not dressed as Harley Quinn with big assets on display. But we'll see. My first cosplay might be happening soon. So.
Oh, would love to. I've got this sort of sneaking preview, and I'd love to see that. Yeah.
But the atmosphere is nice, and then when you kind of then look online, it's like there's no parity. It's like, if you followed what was happening online in terms of cons, there are all these hotbed of people being persecuted and oppressed, and and people shouting horrible words because they're fat, and it's like, no, that's really not my experience of them.
Right.
You go there and it's like, differently able-bodied people, people of all sexes, genders, colours, and it's just a really nice, positive place.
Although I will say, like anything, when you scratch beneath the surface, there is an elite.
Right. Yeah, you really kind of alluded that a few times before.
Yeah. As you say, you know what? When I went to the first con, absolutely, it was like a fucking utopia. All these people are like-minded. They get my references. Yeah. They get the sci-fi quotes. Yeah. They get everything, and there was all different shapes and sizes. I always bring up a girl who was dressed as Power Girl, now with the big boobs, and she was very overweight, but she had such a great smile and such a great personality that it all fell away. And she was the perfect Power Girl for me. It was and I won't mention them, but the cosplay clique charity thing that she belonged to. No, you don't look. And they, because you had to meet certain criteria for these people.
It's a really interesting thing, because what you're basically talking about relates really closely to my experiences in the gay fetish world.
Right.
That to me, it's a celebratory thing. It's really, and it's a very much a kind of leveling thing. That if you put some effort into your look, into what you're wearing, and fuck it, sometimes like maybe just kind of working with the parameters of your body and hiding a bit of flab here, but at the end of the day, it's all kind of smoke and mirrors and illusion. And if you've kind of gone to those lengths, that should be celebrated and championed. And but in a kind of fraternal way, in a kind of in a spirit of kind of everybody enjoying it. And I think, but what you do very quickly get is hierarchies, and humans just need to put hierarchies in place, and it happens in the.
There's a very Jordan Peterson. But but I totally agree. Yeah,
it happens in the gay fetish world that and it's something I despise. With a passion that you have this kind of there's this sash culture in the gay fetish world that you so once a year you're elect Mr. Midwest Leather. And they get a sash for the year to wear. And they are the representative of the Midwest Tri-County area for that year. And it's like...
Have you ever been to America, Steve?
Yeah, a couple of times. Not for a long time, actually. But,
Have you ever been to the Midwest area?
No, Tri-Counties. I don't think I'm going to go there. I don't even know where that is. But it happens it's happening in Europe as well, and there's now Mr. Puppy, Mr. Superhero Fetish, and everything has to be a beauty pageant. Everything has to be you're the best, and they kind of pansy it up with kind of,
and of course it will be really political, and it won't really.
Oh, totally! It's got to be representative, and the big ones in the US, and there's like International Man of Leather, IML, I think that's what it stands for. I've never kind of really bothered, but there's been all kind of debate around that we have to have a differently able-bodied person winning, and we have to have a trans man, and it's like, no, this is the whole fucking trap of representation. That representation is just a trap to fall into, because the things that we have created, the media and the kind of these sash things or whatever you want to call them, are too powerful. Once they become too powerful, once we kind of put all the power inside these these kind of artifices, then we have to have representation because we have to have everybody represented within that construct. And it's like, well, actually no, because you haven't actually changed the group, what happens underneath that. These are all very much kind of new thoughts. Kind of
I can really see that. Yeah, you're not actually changing what's happening underneath that. Yeah.
I mean, the whole representation thing is like, oh well, there aren't enough. For me, there's not enough kind of big, beefy, muscle bearded dudes who like rock music represented on the media at the moment. It's like, I don't give a shit. That's not what it's about. If your mentality and your kind of sense of self is so fragile that you can't exist without seeing yourself represented in the media, you should be taking a long look at like what the media has become. It's weird. It's just freaks me out.
Really, really interesting.
But you could go on about that for ages. It's
No, I love what you just said, and I'm glad that's down there for the ages, as it were. That if, let me see if I can paraphrase it. If you need to see an idealized version of yourself represented in the media, who you think you are as an identity representing the media. Yeah, then. But isn't that Dorothy's? It's quite simple. Dorothy's from the Wizard of Oz. If I didn't find who I was in my own backyard or happiness in my own backyard, I never lost myself in the first place.
It's an interesting thing because I can see with any of these things they are arguments and there are talking points and discussions, and I think if you have to kind of really sort of caricature it. But if you have a society which is kind of majority white and there's some small coloured people, minority of people of colour, and you have the media where there's just all people of white, I can see that would start to become kind of feel a little bit like, okay, where am I? I don't exist. And so I can see that there are definite ways that this could be a positive thing and it should be kind of thought about, but then it's the extension of this, and it's
always co-opted by a much more insidious.
The thing is, there never seems to be a stop point. It's never, we've achieved that, we've worked that one out.
Right.
Now let's stop. Right. Now let's kind of sit back and like, because then it's the next thing, and it's like and it just goes on and on and on. I think this is kind of where we are with feminism. That like there are still major battles to be won, I'm sure. There are still kind of issues that need addressing, but we've got to kind of keep the juggernaut moving because it's an industry and there's money in there. So as soon as we stop fighting for it, people are going to lose their bloody jobs.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's as simple as that, but I think there is an element.
I think so. I think that's a very big nail that you're hitting on the head there. Yeah. Absolutely, the juggernaut, the industrial juggernaut, and I think everything, and especially, I mean, using it as a medium that we are now, the internet is such a big thing that nearly everything, having an opinion, is a fucking industry now. You can get Patreon donations if you make your opinion salient enough for a certain demographic. It's huge. It's huge now. And is it a double-edged sword? I mean, I love the fact that that I'm able to put that out there and interview people and talk to people, and that's good. That feels good for me. As I've got older, now I've started to look slightly more avuncular, and perhaps more of my bearing is. You just feel like you want to do something good, or something that someone else finds nice and rewarding, and that you're making some sort of difference in any sort of positive sphere.
And that's something,
Maybe as life slightly crushes my spirit, I want to make one final.
I mean, that's a really interesting thought, and not something I've been, I hadn't really thought of in terms of what you're doing here and what these are about, but that is an interesting thing because I watch a lot of YouTube stuff, and generally it will tend to be I'll look at the negative side of YouTube,
of course,
and there's like Riley Dennis. I think it's Riley Dennis.
Oh yeah,
Dennis.
Yeah.
And it's like she. I'll be polite.
Sure.
She's a fucking awful person.
Yeah, no,
it's just fucking moan and bitch and why can't you be like this? Why? And everything's that hammer cut. So it's like you can't take a second to think about what she's saying.
You know that. I think that's a technique that they always use.
And then you get the people commenting on her videos, and it's like all this kind of cacophony of shit, and like no one's actually creating anything nice, which is just saying, you know what, maybe it'd be nice if this would be kind of. Well, actually, she does. So I'm sure I'm going to get people in the comments.
Yeah, no, you won't get any comments on this. But,
that's something else.
But it's that is the whole thing I wanted to try and show, that we are all individuals. I mean, I've been a shopkeeper now for 20 years. And you wouldn't make a lot of money if you didn't treat everyone that walked through that door as an individual, with an individual story, with an individual,
And that's the interesting thing that, all of this stuff on YouTube and this kind of the call out culture is that it's all about this idealism and everything's kind of like, oh, we could just do so much better. And for me, I just sort of think, yeah, you know what, that's a really nice thing to strive towards, making things better. At the same time, you have to balance that with pragmatism, and you have to balance it with the fact that we're all fallible. We're all going to make stupid, horrible mistakes, and we have to be able to make allowances for that and accept that and make that part of the solution. It's humans are flawed, and that's and in some ways that's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful that we make mistakes and we learn from it and we move on, but you're never going to take away the fundamental aspect that we're going to keep making mistakes.
Well, I mean, that is one thing I'll say, pragmatism, and people talking about end rape and end this. And now, of course, we all want to, we'd all love to live in a world without rape, without death, without murder, without crime, without racism. But as you said, you have to be pragmatic. I think they're all axioms that come with being a human.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's really
you can only hope to oppose them, is what I mean. You can only hope to oppose these horrible things.
You have to look at you look at the extremes. You look at the killing of Jamie Bolger. An atrocious thing to have to think about. How do you think about what do we do with these? I think they were like 9 and 10, the two lads.
I think they might have even been younger than that, but around that. This is
it's like, how do you think about it? And in a world where we've just kind of got these ideals and kind of we've only really been thinking about the kind of moving things forward and being nice, you don't know how to kind of process these things. And you see a lot of that these days with kind of, love is love. It's like, let's just think about love. It's like, but unfortunately, there's shit over there, and someone's going to have to shovel that fucking shit. And I think this is kind of one of the things for me with my life and my background and how my life played out, which has never really been a bed of roses. It's by no means been terrible, in the grand scheme of things. But
do you think anyone's is so?
No, not at all. But I think some people don't really kind of take the lessons on board,
and I think some people simply, if they think it's been, or if they feel it's been too good, they have to create the drama that makes it not quite.
Well, I think some people don't have it bad enough.
That's a really good point. I like that.
There seems to be a lot of people that have far too much time on their hands to kind of contrive themselves and contrive all this kind of shit. And it's like, you know what? I'm just keeping my head above water most of the time.
I'm just breathing in and out.
And that's enough for me. But where were we before that? That was a long rambling train.
It was. Jamie Bolger.
So just in terms of like how we deal with the kind of the negativity of the world. And I think there seems to be a lot of stuff on the internet and with certain groups of people that they just want to ignore the negativity. And if you ignore it and you just focus on the nice stuff, it'll go away.
Right.
And I don't see how that's ever going to be true. I don't.
There's a really interesting quote I read somewhere. I can't remember who to attribute it to, but about love. You're saying, love, everyone should love it. And there was a quote about without discrimination, love means nothing. For the man who says he loves everything, truly loves nothing.
Yeah.
To say that if you had a life partner, or I had a kid, both of which we don't have.
Not the ones you know.
If we was to say that we loved everyone in the world as much as we loved that life partner or kid or whatever, we would be telling a lie, not only to other people but to ourselves.
So we've created that lie. We've created that lie on Facebook. We've created the lie where you are my friend, and you're my friend simply by clicking a button, and you're not my friend.
Brilliant.
And you're not my friend. There's people. I regularly, and I've got a line which nobody seems to read on my Facebook profile, which is, if you have more than 1,000 friends, I'm unlikely to want to connect to you. Because I don't. I'm now in the position that I don't use Facebook in that way. I use it as this kind of outlet for my thoughts and kind of stream of consciousness, and that's pretty much how I've always used it. And if you're not going to banter with me, if you're not going to connect with me, I don't really want to be.
Layup on the group. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. He said, do you know Brundle's constant or Brundle's number?
Oh yeah. So it's kind of, that's the maximum number of people that you can
have a meaningful. Because he brought that up to me the other day. I
think it was off of something I posted on one of my comments.
Right.
But, you go to these people, they're like 2,000 friends, and it's like, all you're doing is just devaluing what the currency of a friend is. If a friend is just someone you've clicked a button on, what does that say?
But it makes you feel safe, though, doesn't it? Surely. I mean, when I'm really low, in times of anxiety.
It doesn't for me. I went through that whole process, and I went through this sort of point where I got up to about like I think I had 500 or 600 friends, maybe more, and I was just kind of, I would accept anyone who was like halfway hot looking.
Well, you know the criteria, folk.
Yeah, gotta be. But then gradually, it all just came to a head with some kind of where I was basically accused of being a racist, an evil racist.
Wasn't that over the Washington Redskins?
Yeah, I was wearing Washington Redskins cap.
I mean, isn't that
proud as hell of, because I looked so douchey, and not because it's a hugely kind of controversial thing. It was just like an awesome football cap that I was like really chuffed with, and I got basically just dragged.
I think that the really weird comeback from that was when the Native American Indians actually said, "Oh, we don't really have a problem with that." They started blaming them. You don't understand. You're fucking savages. You don't understand. And it was just like, what are you talking about?
There's that girl, Candice Brown, is it?
Williams Brown. Kanye West tweeted about it. Yeah. Is she good or is she?
She's interesting. I've seen bits of these. I've watched a few videos of her, and she's really fascinating.
Okay.
She's kind of very erudite, and she has her opinions, and a lot of what she says is engaging and kind of seems to be well thought through.
Okay.
But from what I can kind of see, I'm sure she's just despised by the left and the Black Lives Matter, because you've got a person of colour coming out with an opinion which is not.
But as you say, isn't that because it's an industry? They've got certain juggernauts moving in directions that people like that.
Yeah.
You bring up a narrative, that's a roadblock there for your juggernaut.
It's the same as being gay in London. Being gay in London, if you're not left leaning, anti-Brexit, this, that, and the other, feminist, and
are you being serious?
Absolutely.
Even if you're really hot.
Even if you're really hot.
If you don't toe the line.
You have to toe the line. And it's not just London, it's the wider gay male, predominantly because that's the world I inhabit and the world I kind of move in. But, these days it has got to the point where if I'm getting on with somebody and I've, maybe just connected with someone, I've been commenting, maybe there's been a mutual friend and we've been kind of exchanging comments, and we maybe turn that into a little exchange of messages, and I'll sort of think, you seem like a really nice person. And it's almost now got to the point where I'll say, by the way, I don't believe in feminism. Just to get that out of the way as quickly as possible, because I know, if not, 2 months down the line, they're going to find out, and it's like, invasion of body searches.
Exactly.
And it's happened. It's happened recently. I posted one comment on. I posted a status about reading about the LGBTQIA2AS full acronym alphabet soup thing, and it was the first time I'd ever seen it being written out in full, non-ironically or non-kind of taking the piss out of, or kind of commenting on it. And I just wrote this little throwaway status of like, I've just seen it non-ironically for the first time ever. And this dude who I was quite close with, I was quite chatty close with. We chatted on a daily basis. He was kind of like, you could just tell, he was kind of the hackles on the back of his neck. He's like, but then at the same time, he was saying, well, I don't really agree with straight people being included in that, but you can't not include intersex people. And it's like, well, hang on, who are you to decide that what gets involved? And this is the problem with that stupid acronym. Where's the committee? Where's the group of like elder LGBT crones and wizened people, sitting there kind of
sitting around the ancient gay tree of
no, and now we should. Oh, and actually, that's something kind of going on back onto your last video because Jack, his little kind of thing about aromatics. Jack, you're an idiot. You got it completely fucking wrong. If you listen this far, you're a fucking dick. No, it's not aromatic. It's aromantics.
Oh, aromantic.
So they are people who. So it's a sexuality. It's an expression of your sexuality that you maybe form physical attachments with another person, but there would never be any romantic feeling between you. So you just basically have no sense or concept or ability or faculty to develop a romantic.
Isn't that a psychopath? Isn't that what a psychopath is?
They're all just pathological.
But yeah, because I've always said that about when I've heard. But no, he's
I liked your line about basil. That was really good. Did you say basil or basil? It was really good.
No, that's you got to meet Jesus. As if he'd take offence. We'd all be laughing. Where was it before basil? But before that, Jack thing, what was
aromantic? Yeah.
I've always said it about, even with females that I've met that have talked to me about fuck buddies, and I said, well, where do you get these fuck buddies? You queue up at Argos and get them, because it seems to me there's always someone losing out. I mean, and I even believe that in polyamorous relationships. There's always someone that's more into it than the other person.
Yeah.
So there's always someone bound if it continues, because you can't have continued physical intimacy with someone and simply not develop feeling.
No, I think it all just comes down to personal stories, and I think people, and that's where these categories fall apart. It's like you endlessly dividing these little boxes into even smaller boxes, and ultimately you just kind of trying to you're trying to kind of fit people into boxes, which is what a lot of these stuff, it always seems to be that's what we don't want to do, but then we are doing it. And in terms of the sort of polyamory thing, well, there's I know too many instances of actual polyamorous triads kind of relationships where actually when you scratch the surface, it's not super duper healthy, and maybe one of them should actually kind of moved on fucking years ago, or eventually it all just does move on. I don't know. Certainly in gay culture and in gay bear culture, it's kind of become quite a bit of a what would you call it? Sort of prized status of we're in a throuple,
right?
But
in gay culture in itself, it's always been much more prevalent the open relationship, but that isn't quite the same as polyamory, is it? I mean, I can understand the sort of open relationship and being very different from a polyamorous relationship.
See, I can totally understand polyamory, but then, I've got a lot of love.
Hey!
But I do kind of, but then, I don't know, it's really, I think if you do meet someone that you do fall desperately in love with, and they fulfill you in more ways than you kind of...
But is that what you hope? Are you hoping for that? Are you hoping?
I don't know anymore. Right. I really don't know. But I'm in a bit of a kind of,
because this beard is my monastic beard of celibacy. If you see me without the beard, you realise something really serious has happened in my life.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, talking about, what do we want, what we're looking for, what this, what that. Unless the person who I meet really likes it and it's their fetish and they want me to keep it, then...
Well, it's the whole thing of like, I meet people I get on with and I like quite often. I think I'm going back to that earlier point. I think I'm quite an agreeable person. Just recently.
But don't you find that some people like disagreeable people?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, completely.
I used to think that. Oh, if I'm really nice and I'm like this, then it'll turn out like this, and it just doesn't.
I don't understand it at all. It's fundamentally confuses the hell out of me. There's one guy in particular that I know around about. We've got loads of mutual friends, and we'll be in the same grouping sometimes. He is obnoxious. He's absolutely. He's boorish. He thinks far too much of himself. He thinks he's super bloody intelligent, and he's not. And you'll be in a group with him, and he will, you'll just be chatting with your mates, and they'll be just light-hearted kind of, or maybe kind of getting into some interesting subject. Sure. He won't engage until it's what he wants to talk about, and then when he wants to talk about, everyone has to shut up and listen to him. And then you'll be still.
But it's amazing how they command it, though, and people fall into line.
He's an
I've got a friend.
guy.
I've got a friend like that.
Yeah, he's an attractive guy as well.
Yeah,
he just gets his own way, and he has. I think the thing is, I'm pretty sure there's this whole kind of pathology with this, that these people identify one or two wingmen to kind of like build their power base, and once they've done that, it's like they're unassailable. I've got my kind of little wingman. And
Darth Vader in the trenches.
Yeah,
the force is strong with this one.
Yeah, I see it, and I see it all the time, and it just, I kind of think, well, I just go around being, hopefully, try to think I'm a nice person. I don't know.
That's good. I think that's good enough if you're aspiring to be that. I mean, that's all you can really hope to do. You take your own values, and you can see the effects that you have. As I said, probably you as well. I've had some really dark moments where you can't look at yourself in the mirror, and they're not usually for reasons that you've done really bad things, but you just sort of perceived yourself, and I'm moving in the right direction, and I should be doing this, and I'm not realising this, and the existential things that you were talking about earlier.
I have no facility for that whatsoever. Maybe I should. Maybe that's just going to give me pause for thought, because I just get on with it, and it's just. I think at the moment, I do. I think there is a bit of a discrepancy at the moment from what I can kind of see between how I perceive myself and how others perceive me. The things that people will say to me is like, really? You think I'm quite opinionated and big nerve? It's like, oh yeah, I suppose I come around a little bit. But I don't necessarily. I never see myself as being this kind of like terrifying kind of force of like.
No, but again, isn't reality? The other people's reality are made up of how they perceive, not necessarily how you perceive yourself. Unless you do what the far lefters were trying to, police people's thoughts and tell people how to think about certain things. I could stay here all night and probably set up some sleeping bags, but this is the longest interview I've done. But I've got to thank you so much. It's been fantastic. I have promised everyone a second interview.
We'll do part two.
Yeah, we do part two, definitely. We'll get Jack. We'll get Jack in the phone about his aromatic
sexuality.
So everyone, thank you for listening, for tuning in. This has been David and Stevie. And it's been fantastic. This has been great fun here, and the hour's just flown by. We're a little bit over. But this is us signing off on Out of the Ordinary. Thank you so much.